Good morning. Hiya. How's it going? I got a Pokeball. What do you think's inside the Pokeball? I might have regret it. I think I regret starting stream right now because all of a sudden I gotta rush to the bathroom. Hopefully it's just gas. Oh my god. Sure am glad I told everybody that. Hmm. Education's a weird thing in this country. If I had the right opportunities and a better education system, I'd be able to do a lot more than I am right now. And I'm pretty keenly aware of at every point that the system has failed me. In my school, the students have a saying about what qualifies for their education. They say I was edumacated, not as a cutesy way of saying it. Was edumacated in school learnery. So I find it extremely weird because what I've heard lately from people talking about me and my opinions is that because I don't have children, that I have no stake in education. I have no stake in the country and the future of the country, and I should probably mind my own business. Which is fantastic. I love it when people use my own arguments against me. That is the proper way to think. That's something that we should be teaching our students. But we're not because we're too busy focusing on drag queen story hour. You know, that whole situation where drag queens donated their time, energy, and money to read, to teach students to read because the country wouldn't pay the teachers to. Remember, this isn't a country where schools routinely get shut up. So they risked their lives to do that. And they got shit on for it. There was a school in Utah that I went to, and I taught. Well, I didn't really teach. We did a seminar with a bunch of students in uniform and taught them how to use Adobe Flash and some rudimentary basics of game making. Should that be allowed? Wait, where's this red piece go? I have an extra red piece. Oh, it goes on the Pokeball. It was a clear stand. I wonder if I wasn't wearing a uniform while teaching those kids the finer points of programming. Well, it wasn't really the finer points of programming. Would there have been a boycott against me, too? Um, for the longest time, there's this stereotype. You know, China's education system, their students are beating us. We need to catch up. And when we finally started to change stuff in order to catch up, everybody started protesting what was being taught in schools. Because they couldn't figure out what was being taught in schools. They were protesting the students learning more than the parents knew. because they couldn't understand the literature, they decided that it was junk that was not worth being taught. Well, shit, dude. I've tried to teach several people how to use a computer now, and every single time they're like, oh, I just don't get it. It's the same thing. Effectively, that's what you look like to me. Somebody trying to teach students a better way, and the parents going, well, I don't understand all this fancy computer shit, so my kids shouldn't have to learn it. Bingo. Hey. Oh, here it is. Ah. Really? You don't want me to stick into one of these convenient holes placed here. You want me to add another hole on top. All right. That seems silly. Yeah, Magikarp is a goofy Pokemon, but goddamn, this is a goofy Magikarp. I don't know. Ever since the Taliban got in control of our government and decided that they wanted to control women's reproductive rights, the nation's been a shit show. You know? Then I think about my mom and how she treated me and how she treated my education, and I wonder if parents should be involved in education at all. I realize that I haven't gone over the reason why I have a stake in education. Because the argument is I don't have kids, so I don't have a stake in the future of education. Well, Do you have a stake in your neighbor's kids' education? What about the education of the kid down the street whom we've never met before? What makes you any more qualified to dictate their education? And the answer is because you care, right? So your argument that I don't have a stake, you're arguing that I don't care about people. I have a running joke that I say I hate everybody respectfully. And that's all that is. It's a joke. The key word there is respectful. It means no matter how much I dislike you, how much I may hate your face, I'll still show you an ounce of respect. That doesn't mean you'll get more from me. But that little ounce, that little bit of human dignity, I'll still show you that. Education isn't political, it shouldn't be dictated by politics. It should be dictated by people that know what they're talking about, educators. There should be some input from the teachers as to how it's affecting the kids' health and mental health because they live with the kids. But at the end of the day, most parents aren't qualified to be educators. Maybe they should be. Maybe if you have a kid, you want to enroll them in the public education system. It's your responsibility to be a teacher. Instead of just on the PTA. Which means you have to take the exact same classes that your kids teach, your kids are learning, so that you're not dumber than your kids. I don't know how to stop the epidemic of parents protesting their kids' education. It started a long time ago. when I was a kid, probably even before then. Parents said just echoing the same sentiments that their parents said that didn't work for them. How do you make people want to learn, want to read? How do you influence them all? Because, we can't change the minds of the parents. We can just watch as the kids grow up, missing out on opportunities that they should have been a part of. We watch kids in the same situations generation after generation after generation after generation. We don't do anything about it. The same arguments keep coming up that prevent us from doing anything about it. Hell, maybe we make the parents teachers. Maybe we make part of the curriculum requirements for high schoolers uh, to teach middle schoolers and elementary school students. And maybe we make part of the curriculum requirements for college students to teach the high school students. That's Inside Out. You see this t-shirt that I wear? I've got two of them. Not to flash everybody. I take pride in the squadron, the Griffin, 367 TRSS at Utah Air Force Base. I take pride in it because of what I was able to accomplish there, the things that I've learned, and what the squadron stood for in education. I'm looking at something, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of what to say here. Like, our education system is shit. We know it's shit. But every time that we change it, all of a sudden something strange comes up. Like, we need to stop teaching kids about freedom and equality and liberty and civics. That doesn't make any sense to me. Hmm. I don't know. It's Black History Month, so here's a good place to start. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon and light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to stop here. Men is not masculine. Men is human. We are men. We are human. Just because woman has a woe in front of it doesn't mean they're not men. Because they're human. I want you to remember that. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if this nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must take the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, "For whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you came from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair, I say to you today, my friends. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day, on the red hills of Georgia, the son of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from mountaintop of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. I'm going to address the elephant in the room here. You think Martin Luther King was a little bit sexist? Sorry, sorry. I mean, obviously, in his speech, there was a separation between son and daughter. But that was just the way it was then. We know better now. And even though we know better, we're still in the same place as when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Hundreds of years and another 4 decades. So the question is, what is freedom to you? For every person, freedom is something different. For me, it's to travel to places I haven't traveled before. To learn and pursue the things that I want to learn. And accomplish. I'm talking about things that I want to accomplish that will be here long after I'm gone. I don't want to be forgotten again. So that's the stake that I have in the country, in the world, in education. I want my time to be productive. Anyway, I'm gonna go hop on Twitch and play Final Fantasy. You're welcome to join me. Done with this part of the stream. Thanks so much. Feel